A staff member. Anyone. French, please. The voice cracked across the Grand Eden Hotel lobby, sharp and urgent. Aaliyah Brooks paused mid-swipe, her cloth hovering over the marble tile, her knuckles tight from hours of work. A woman stood near the concierge, panic spread across her flawless face. French spilled from her lips, quick and pleading. She clutched her phone like it was sinking. The concierge looked around. A bellhop hesitated. No one moved. Aaliyah stayed low, heartbeat pounding. She wasn't meant to answer. Not her place, not in that uniform. But still, no one moved. She stood. Je peux vous aider, madame, she said softly, clearly. The air went still. A man at the espresso bar set down his cup. The concierge blinked. Even the crying woman paused, startled. Not by the words, but by who had spoken them. Merci, the guest said, almost in disbelief. Aaliyah nodded, but her throat tightened. She wasn't supposed to be heard. Housekeepers were furniture. Present, but unnoticed. Quiet labor, clean hands, closed mouths. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, slow, measured. Mr. Whitaker, owner, authority, voice of final say. He moved like the floor made way for him, suit flawless, expression unreadable. When he stepped into view, the staff straightened. The noise disappeared. He didn't glance at the others. He looked directly at Aaliyah. You speak French? He asked. It wasn't a question. It was a decision. Yes, sir, she answered carefully. The guest, she was. That's enough. One pause. 2 seconds. Then, follow me. He turned, expecting obedience, not explaining himself. Aaliyah placed her cloth in the bucket, straightened her back, walked behind him. Every eye in the lobby followed. They passed a doorman who shifted his weight. A guest near the fireplace lowered her magazine. No one made a sound. The walk to the private wing felt longer than usual. The corridor dimmed slightly, the way some moments feel heavier than light can carry. At the end stood a tall, dark door with a brushed gold plaque. General Manager, Private Mr. Whitaker opened it, silent. No gesture, no reassurance. She stepped in. He followed. The door closed with a soft click behind them, and in that half-second before it shut, just before the lock clicked into place, she heard it. Applause. Software scattered. Real. It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. But it was there. And it wasn't for the hotel. It was for the girl with the mop who spoke French better than the managers who'd ignored her. Her voice barely carried across the office, but pride slipped through before she could contain it. Even now, under fluorescent light, with authority sitting across the desk, she wasn't shrinking. Not this time. Mr. Whitaker leaned forward slightly, studying her. How many languages do you speak, Miss Brooks? Aaliyah's hands tightened around the cleaning rag still folded in her lap. Her knuckles paled under the pressure. 9, she said. His brow lifted. Disbelief flickered, then settled into something else, something closer to intrigue. 9? He repeated. Yes, sir. No one knew. She looked up then. Her voice was steady, her shoulders straight. No one ever asked. Behind Mr. Whitaker, the door creaked open. A figure stepped in, Mr. Renner, the operations manager. Arms folded tight, jaw locked, tone sharp. This isn't about skill, it's about protocol, he said. Housekeeping staff aren't to engage guests in anything other than English. It disrupts expectations. Aaliyah met his glare without flinching. Maybe the expectations need to change. The room held its breath. Before Mr. Renner could reply, Mr. Whitaker lifted a hand. Calm, but final. That's enough, he said. His eyes didn't leave Aaliyah. I want to hear more. Later that afternoon, Aaliyah sat in a smaller office. Glass walls, cold chair, buzzing light overhead. Her uniform was clean but worn, her posture composed despite the weight pressing against her chest. Across the table, Mr. Whitaker sat with his jacket off, sleeves rolled, hands folded. Tell me, he said. How does someone working full-time, 6 days a week, learn 9 languages? Aaliyah glanced to the narrow window. The street far below looked like a world she wasn't allowed to reach. Cars passed. Lives moved on. I study whenever I can, she said. On breaks. After shifts. Between rooms. I borrow books from the library down the street. He didn't interrupt. I wait until my brothers are asleep before I turn on the recordings. I use old headphones. I write down every word I don't recognize. Brothers? She nodded. 2. Malik's 12. Darius just turned 10. And your parents? Gone. The word landed hard. I've been raising them since I was 17. I work nights so I can be home during the day. I clean here, I clean apartments, sometimes offices, whatever covers rent. But the languages, that's mine. Mr. Whitaker was silent for a long moment, then finally, how did it feel when you answered that guess today? Aaliyah's voice lowered, but it didn't lose strength. It felt like I remembered who I used to be. The pause stretched long again, not from discomfort, but respect. Mr. Whitaker exhaled, sat back slightly. Well, he said, I think we've underestimated you, Miss Brooks. From the hallway, someone knocked. The assistant leaned in quietly. Excuse me, sir. Channel 9 just called. They heard something about a hotel employee speaking 9 languages. They want to confirm if it's true. Mr. Whitaker glanced back at Aaliyah. She stared at her folded hands. I didn't do it for attention. He smiled slightly. Good. Then maybe the attention found the right person. Mr. Whitaker nodded slowly, the edge in his jaw beginning to loosen. That's a lot to carry. I don't have a choice, Aaliyah said softly. But sometimes I wonder if anyone here even sees me, or if I'm just part of the wallpaper. You're not wallpaper to me anymore, he said. But others. He didn't finish the sentence. His gaze lowered, voice quiet. Others might see your rise as disruption, not progress. The air between them felt heavier after that. Not tense, just truthful. Word traveled fast. By the time the next staff meeting began, Aaliyah felt the shift in the room before a single word was spoken. Whispers trailed behind her like smoke. She's suddenly special now? Someone muttered behind a clipboard. I heard she's being fast-tracked. Figures a housekeeper near the coffee station rolled her eyes. They never want us knowing too much. Makes them nervous. The words stung, but Aaliyah didn't slow her steps. She walked straight through the murmur and sat down like none of it reached her skin. But it had. That night, the city felt louder than usual outside her apartment. Sirens in the distance, the buzz of neon bleeding through the blinds. Aaliyah sat curled on the frayed couch cushion, her back aching and her feet still sore from the double shift. From the hallway, her little brother Caleb appeared, holding a textbook almost as tall as his chest. Can you help with this equation? He asked, pushing the open math page toward her. She smiled, not wide, not fake, just tired and full of love. Of course, she said. They worked through problems quietly, his pencil scratched on paper. She rubbed at her temples between explanations. Her phone buzzed beside her. A message from Mr. Whitaker. Come to my office tomorrow. We need to talk about your role here. Her hand stayed hovering over the screen. The room, once just small, suddenly felt airless. Was this the moment she stepped forward? Or would it pull her deeper into something she couldn't escape? The next morning, the hotel's executive suite looked different. Brighter, sharper. Filled with new faces and old rules. Mr. Whitaker stood by the front desk, waiting for her. When she entered, he didn't call her staff. He introduced her by title. This is Aaliyah Brooks, he said. She's joining the leadership team as our new international guest liaison. A murmur ran through the room. Not gasps, not applause. Just that low wave of discomfort people get when change touches too close. Aaliyah stood still, hands at her sides. Her uniform had been traded for a blazer, borrowed from a neighbor, a half size too big. But she stood taller in it. This role, Whitaker continued, was not created as a gesture. It was earned. Fluency in 9 languages, record performance, dedication beyond hours. If that makes people uncomfortable, adjust. Some heads turned, others didn't. Aaliyah's chest tightened as she looked across the faces in the room, some curious, some cold. But none of it stopped her. She nodded once. Calm. Ready. Whatever happened next, it would be on her terms. Eyes followed her from every angle. Some held admiration, others masked resentment beneath polite smiles. Aaliyah Brooks stood tall, the title on her name badge crisp, International Guest Liaison. It sounded official, but to some, it sounded like trouble. After the meeting, a man broke from the crowd, impeccably dressed, intent behind every word. From housekeeping to the executive tier, he said with a gleam in his eye. Not bad. But you understand how places like this work, don't you? She turned to face him. Garrett Price. Senior operations, power broker, enemy in a tailored suit. People like me, he continued, his voice smooth as silk and just as slippery. Don't lose ground without resistance. Aaliyah didn't blink. Then I'll resist, she said quietly. But not on your terms. He smiled, but the warmth didn't reach his eyes. Then he turned and walked away. The weeks that followed were quiet, but only on the surface. Aaliyah performed with precision. Guest conflicts resolved. Cultural gaps bridged. VIPs sent personal notes praising her. She became the go-to for everything between languages and crises. But underneath it all, things began to shift. She was left off key emails. Meeting invites vanished from her calendar. One guest file had been deliberately altered. Minor changes that could have meant major fallout. She knew who was behind it. She just couldn't prove it. Yet. One afternoon, Garrett approached her again, this time with a folder. Seems this memo went out with your name on it. Shame. Could hurt you if it isn't handled quickly. His tone was casual. Performed innocence. He placed the folder on her desk. Aaliyah flipped it open. The formatting was off. Signatures were inconsistent. The French translation? Sloppy. She reached for her own binder and pulled out the correct document. Original headers. Approved seals. Time-stamped. Notarized. She laid it beside the fake memo without a word. Garrett stared for a beat longer than he meant to. From the corridor, footsteps approached. Mr. Whitaker stepped into view. His eyes moved from Garrett to Aaliyah, then down to the papers. Handled already? He asked. Yes, sir, Aaliyah replied. Handled and corrected. The original was never compromised. Whitaker looked to Garrett. Anything else? Garrett's jaw tensed. No, sir. Whitaker nodded and turned to leave. Garrett followed, slower now. The balance had shifted. That day, something changed. Not loudly, but meaningfully. The stares softened. Colleagues began asking Aaliyah questions, in hallways, over lunch, even during meetings. Not gossip, guidance. Her voice no longer passed through rooms. It stayed in them. That evening, alone in the break room, Aaliyah sat by the window with a cup of tea. The city buzzed outside, but inside was still. Mr. Whitaker stepped in, resting against the doorframe. They're still talking, he said, watching her quietly. Aaliyah didn't flinch. Let them talk, she replied. I stopped needing their permission to exist. He nodded. You've done more than exist. You've shifted the room. She looked up. I've spent years being the shadow in the corner, she said. It's strange learning how to stand in light. He nodded once more. You belong in the light, Ms. Brooks. Don't let anyone drag you back out. The investigation was quiet, but deliberate. Internal audits cross-checked every flagged discrepancy. Guest reports were reviewed. Memos pulled. Digital trails traced. Within a week, the truth became undeniable. Garrett Price had orchestrated multiple acts of sabotage. Altered documents, missing files, false complaints whispered into the right ears. With irrefutable proof on the table, He was called into Mr. Whitaker's office. He didn't walk out with a badge. He walked out with a box. That morning, Aaliyah Brooks stood near the lobby entrance, sunlight pouring through the glass atrium, casting gold across the polished floors. Staff passed her without whispers. No averted glances, no murmurs, just nods, small acknowledgments, real ones. Her phone buzzed, a text from her youngest brother. "You did it." She smiled quietly and pressed the phone to her chest. It wasn't just the end of a conflict. It was the beginning of something deeper. Her badge rested on her blazer. It used to feel like a borrowed symbol. Now, it felt earned, anchored. The hotel didn't hold a meeting about Garrett's removal. No speeches were made. But something shifted. Doors didn't pause when she approached them anymore. Her name wasn't whispered. It was spoken aloud, clearly, in meetings. People looked her in the eye. Respect had replaced tolerance. But for Aaliyah, the win wasn't in the silence of others. It was in the stillness she felt inside herself. She walked the same corridors she used to clean, past the same linen carts she once pushed. But now, when she greeted the housekeeping team, they smiled without hesitation. Some even asked her advice. A younger girl, Marcia, followed her out one day just to ask how she'd learned so many languages. Aaliyah didn't say much, just one word at a time. That was all. Later that evening, she sat at her kitchen table, the city's hum threading in through the cracked window. Caleb and Malik did their homework at the counter. One argued about fractions. The other asked what a liaison actually did. She explained while washing dishes. She didn't mention Garrett. She didn't need to. What mattered was this. They saw her. Fully. Not tired. Not background noise. Not just surviving. They saw her present. Whole. She thought about the nights she'd studied by dim light, keeping one eye on sleeping kids and the other on grammar guides in languages most people didn't even recognize. She thought of every shift she'd worked with sore feet and silence as company. Every time she bit her tongue. Every time she stayed invisible to survive. Now she stood beneath a ceiling higher than she ever imagined, not just in architecture, but in truth. And she finally understood something. Strength isn't just surviving in silence. It's being seen clearly, without apology, and staying visible. That was the difference now. She wasn't louder. She was unafraid to be recognized. Her brothers' faces flickered through her mind again. Young, still forming their view of the world. Two boys raised in hardship but never allowed to feel less. Aaliyah knew now that everything she had endured wasn't just for her. It was a blueprint, a reminder, that even if you come from the edges, you can still take up space. Her victory didn't belong to her alone. It was never just about one woman climbing through silence. Aaliyah Brooks knew that now. Her journey had become something else, something wider. A bridge, a living testament that determination, when paired with truth, could break even the oldest barriers. What she carried wasn't light, but it was real. And real things, even when heavy, could still be moved. One afternoon, weeks after the storm had passed, she walked through the hotel lobby as if for the first time. Guests chatted in soft tones. The cafe hummed with the sound of spoons clinking inside porcelain cups. Sunlight streamed through the arched windows, catching particles of dust midair. The light made them shimmer, like tiny celebrations. She paused by the railing at the edge of the mezzanine. Her fingertips brushed the polished marble, cool, unmoved. This surface had watched everything. It had felt her shoes in silence when she cleaned, her hesitation the day she spoke French, and now, her steadiness. It was solid, like her, like the truth she'd carried, long before anyone else was willing to see it. This was her new reality. Not perfect, but hers. A space she'd earned, not granted. She no longer navigated around invisible walls. She spoke. She was heard. Her presence didn't fill a gap. It shaped the room. Her voice helped reframe procedures. Guest protocol changed to include multilingual liaisons. Internal training modules were rewritten. Staff from overlooked departments were consulted more. Slowly, quietly, the culture began to bend, not toward her, but toward what she represented. Back home, her brothers began asking different questions, not, "Why are you tired?" but, "How do you stay so steady?" Malik wanted to learn Spanish. Caleb started writing his thoughts down in a notebook with a lock. Aaliyah saw in their eyes something she hadn't seen for years: permission to dream without apology. Sometimes, late at night, when the city had gone quiet and the world seemed paused, she would look at herself in the mirror. Not for vanity, for memory. To remember how far she had come. To remember the nights bent over flashcards, her fingers raw from bleach, translating sentences in a whisper while two boys slept beside her. To remember how easily the world will flatten you if you don't insist on standing up. One day, Mr. Whitaker found her by the elevator bank. "Thought I might find you here," he said. She smiled, nodded. "I never said thank you," he added. "You gave me a door," she said. "I walked through it, but the rest? That was mine." He didn't argue. He just smiled. "I hope more people walk behind you." As she stepped outside that evening, a breeze picked up off the avenue. The banners above the hotel waved gently in the wind. Her reflection caught in the front glass door. Same eyes, same quiet posture. But inside, different. She no longer tried to shrink herself into roles written for someone else. She shaped her own outline now. Aaliyah Brooks wasn't just a promotion, or a name tag, or a survival story. She was a new framework. A lived reminder that strength isn't in silence. It's in showing up, fully, without apology. Even when the room doesn't expect you to. Even when the room resists. Especially then. If her journey moved you, if her rise felt like something you've waited to see, don't forget to pass it on. Share it. Because stories like this one, they don't just belong to the ones who lived them. They belong to everyone who's ever been overlooked, and everyone who refuses to stay that way.